December 2022, and I'm taking the view from the Prince Bishop's hilltop fortress over the capital of their former kingdom, Würzburg. Würzburg spans the Main River at its midpoint between its source and its discharge into the Rhine. On the hill above the river there's evidence of a Bronze Age settlement and a later Roman fort. Today the hill is still fortified, with a Festung Marienberg overlooking the city. Built by the Prince Bishops of Würzburg, who ruled over a small kingdom centred on the city from 1165 until its annexation by Bavaria in 1803, the Festung Marienberg was originally constructed as a home and power base when the population of the city started suggesting they'd quite like to be a free imperial city like Nuremberg, rather than ruled over by a theocracy. To ensure they kept power, the Prince Bishops retreated to the top of the hill and built a massive complex that stretches all the way down the hill, with outer fortifications and gatehouses down at river level, though most of the fortifications date from rebuilds in the 16th to 18th century. Directly below the fortress, the river is crossed by the Alte Mainbrücke, the oldest non-Roman stone bridge in the world, and with a dozen statues positioned along it bearing a canny resemblance to the Charles Bridge in Prague. Today the bridge is pedestrian and cycle crossing over the Main, but it also forms part of a major weir and lock complex that allow the big cargo barges and river cruise ships to pass through the change in water levels and continue their journey along the Main, upstream towards the Main-Danube Canal and ultimately the Black Sea, or downstream to the Rhine and the North Sea. The original bridge on the site was built around 1120, but after 350 years of service it was in serious need of repair and improvement, so the current bridge was built, with construction starting in 1476. The statues themselves weren't added until 1728 and feature 12 saints, 6 on each side of the bridge. Over the centuries there's been a rolling replacement of the statues as the effects of weathering destroy the originals. Across the river from the fortress, and in clear line of sight, is a residence. Built in the 18th century as a new home for the Prince Bishops, once they decided their power was stable enough to be back down in the city centre. Work started on the building in 1720, and the main structure was completed in just 24 years, with no expense being spared on what was at the time reportedly called the largest parsonage in Europe by Napoleon. The interiors are considered masterworks of Rococo architecture and are dominated by stucco and frescoes. Surrounding the building, the court gardens were designed around the existing fortifications of the city, and so are split over multiple levels and within the walls and walkways of the bastions. For all the time and money they lavished on their palace, the Prince Bishops didn't get to enjoy it for long. In 1803, the Prince Bishopric was abolished with secularisation, and the Grand Duke of Tuscany took control, though he did manage to get to spend some time there, having some of the rooms decorated in Empire style, entertaining amongst others Napoleon, who signed a declaration of war against Prussia of a residence in 1806. In 1814, Würzburg was fully absorbed into the Kingdom of Bavaria, and the residence lost a lot of its importance. On the 16th of March 1945, the Allies launched a devastating bombing raid on the city, unleashing incendiary bombs on the city that destroyed 90% of the city centre and killed around 5,000 people in just 20 minutes. The destruction from both the bombings and the ensuing firestorm caused a greater percentage of damage to the fabric of the city than the raids on Dresden a month earlier. Most of the residents, with the exception of the central part of the building, were totally destroyed, and even in the central section the roofs were destroyed. Rebuilding work started in 1945 and took longer than the original construction, lasting until 1987, with further consolidation and restoration work being undertaken in the early 2010s. Since 1981, the residence, with the gardens and the square in front of the palace, have been inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage List. A short distance from the residence, and next to the less impressive cathedral, is the Neumünster Collegiate Church. The church is located on the spot where St Killen was martyred around 689, and his tomb is still located in the crypt of the church, alongside fellow martyrs Colonat and Totnan. St Killen is the patron saint of the city. There's been at least a memorial building on the site since the mid-8th century, though the current church only dates to the late 17th century when it was remodelled in Baroque style. But of course the most dominant building in the city is the Marienberg fortress that sits on the opposite bank of the river, brooding over the city. Today it is the symbol of Würzburg and houses a number of museums, as well as being the location for some of the best views over the city. As with many fortifications, the latter part of the 20th century left them looking for a role and potentially falling into decay and destruction. In 1990, Würzburg was the venue for the State Garden Show, and in some ways taking inspiration from the way the court garden reused the fortifications of the lower city 200 years earlier, the park for the show was laid out through the fortifications of the lower parts of the castle. They form a series of parks and gardens that you can walk up through as you ascend the side of the hill up towards the fortress itself. Starting with the Luitpoldgraben, close to the mine, which has a small lake, frozen over when I visited in December, you follow the walls of the fortification up towards one of the former lower gatehouses into the fortress, the Seelertor. Further up there are themed gardens, including a Japanese garden that takes advantage of the slope of the hill. After a gentle stroll up through the park, you eventually reach the edge of the fortress and the ring of defences that surround the inner core of the Festung Marienberg. But if you think you're in the heart of the complex yet, you'd be mistaken. There's still multiple gates to go through, each getting more elaborate and elegant to get into the inner courtyard, starting with the outer and then the inner Hochberger gates. Once through the inner Hochberge gate, you then climb a short distance further to reach the Schönborn-Tor. Once through the Schönborn-Tor, you enter the outermost of the courtyards, the Griefenklauhof. From the Griefenklauhof, you need to pass through the Echte Tor, which leads you through into the outer courtyard. From here, you can pass through the final Scharenberg Tor to enter the inner courtyard and the heart of the fortress complex. At the centre of the inner courtyard is the tall tower of the keep of the castle, as well as the Marienkapelle. The Marienkapelle is the oldest church and the first bishop's church in Würzburg, as well as the oldest surviving part of the fortress. The church is the partial burial place of 20 Würzburg bishops. From the 13th until the end of the 16th century, the hearts of the Würzburg bishops were buried in the Ibrach monastery, some 40 kilometres away. Their entrails were buried here, and the rest of their bodies went into a cathedral down in the city. With the multiple layers of walls and fortifications, steep slopes and location of the fortress, it's only natural in this part of the world that some of the slopes have been turned into vineyards. And from the higher level fortifications, you can take in the views across the river to the city and to the rolling vineyard-covered hills that surround Würzburg. If you don't want to come back down the way you went up, then a quick route down is via another one of the outer gates of the lower fortress, the Neutor. Würzburg Hauptbahnhof is a main stop on the German IC network of high-speed trains with direct links to many German cities. There are at least hourly trains from Würzburg Hauptbahnhof direct to Frankfurt Airport, taking around 90 minutes to make the journey. Frankfurt is one of Europe's biggest airports and the primary hub for Lufthansa, with flights across Europe, the Americas, Asia and Africa.